Every year, millions of people buy into 30-day ab challenges and rolling gadgets, convinced that attacking their midsection will melt the fat on top. Biological reality doesn't work that way. Spot reduction, the idea that you can burn fat in a specific area by exercising the muscles underneath it, is an anatomical impossibility. When muscles need energy, lipolysis converts stored triglycerides into free fatty acids. They don't pull fuel from tissue next door, they draw it globally from the bloodstream. Where you store and burn fat is dictated entirely by genetics, gender, and age. Doing 1,000 crunches a day will absolutely build a wall of dense, strong abdominal muscle. It will just remain entirely hidden beneath a systemic layer of fat. Even within that layer of fat, there is a serious biological distinction to make. The soft fat you pinch is subcutaneous fat. It sits underneath the skin as a harmless energy reserve. But push past the abdominal muscle wall, and you find visceral fat. It's dense, hard, and wraps tightly around vital organs like your liver and intestines. Visceral fat operates as an active endocrine organ, pumping inflammatory cytokines directly into your portal circulation and throughout your body. These inflammatory signals drive systemic insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction. Over time, this chronic stress, coupled with vascular damage, is linked to reduced brain volume and a 10-fold increased risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. Eliminating this specific type of abdominal fat is a medical necessity, and because it's a systemic issue, it requires a systemic solution. Optimizing visceral fat loss requires a stable metabolic environment, which begins with addressing the most overlooked factor, chronic sleep deprivation. Skimping on sleep triggers an immediate surge in cortisol. Elevated cortisol has a very specific consequence. It actively promotes fat storage straight into the abdominal region. At the exact same time, a lack of sleep throws your appetite regulators out of balance. It spikes ghrelin, the hormone that makes you hungry, while suppressing leptin, the hormone that signals you're full. This shift alters the reward circuitry in your brain. High-calorie, energy-dense foods become significantly more appealing and harder to resist, even if you aren't physically hungry. Compounding this is a steep drop in insulin sensitivity. Even a few nights of restricted sleep impairs your body's ability to clear blood sugar, funneling more of that excess energy right back into fat storage. If you aren't sleeping, your internal environment is biologically rigged to accumulate belly fat. You cannot out-diet or out-train this baseline. A caloric deficit is required for fat loss, but the composition of your food changes the way your body processes that energy. Ultra-processed foods and high-fructose diets overwhelm your system, funneling excess triglycerides straight into your liver and abdominal cavity, in a process known as lipotoxicity. We can counter this using the thermic effect of food. Different macronutrients require different amounts of energy to digest. Protein is highly inefficient to process, burning 20 to 30% of its own calories just to be absorbed. This high intake also triggers the release of GLP-1 and peptide YY. These are appetite-suppressing hormones that naturally reduce the amount of food you want to eat later in the day. Protein operates as a metabolic dual threat. It keeps you satiated enough to maintain a caloric deficit without starving, while forcing your body to burn extra energy just to digest your meal. Now that your hormones are regulated and your diet is dialed in, you can deploy the right mechanical trigger to burn that stubborn visceral fat. High-intensity interval training, or HIIT, replaces long, moderate jogging with short, vigorous bursts of maximum effort, followed by brief periods of low-intensity recovery. This graph shows why HIIT outperforms standard cardio for deep fat loss. After a session, you trigger excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, or EPOC. Your body continues burning calories at an elevated rate long after you've stopped moving. That intense physical demand forces your muscles to rapidly clear glucose from the bloodstream, sharply improving your overall insulin sensitivity and actively pulling ectopic fat out of your liver. It is the most time-efficient way to force a metabolically stubborn body to open up those deep visceral reserves and use them for fuel. Stop treating your stomach as a localized aesthetic problem that needs to be crunched away. It is a systemic metabolic output. First, repair your insulin sensitivity and shut down excess cortisol production by strictly prioritizing 8 hours of quality sleep. Second, maintain a caloric deficit anchored by high-quality protein. You'll leverage the thermic effect of food and maximize hormonal satiety without suffering through severe hunger. Third, incorporate high-intensity interval sessions to spike your oxygen consumption and force your body to oxidize visceral fat. You cannot control your genetic fat distribution, but by mastering your hormones, your nutrition, and your training intensity, you can force your body to eradicate its most dangerous fat.